Welcome and thank you for joining us for our workshop today on standardized testing. We're going to talk about what's maybe required for high schoolers who are being homeschooled, and even what's beneficial and what maybe isn't when it comes to standardized testing. So my name is Judy. I am the marketing sales coordinator here at Sonlight, and I'm also a veteran homeschooling mom. I've graduated 3 from our Sonlight homeschool and have walked through this standardized testing thing a number of times. Joining me today are Amber and Rhonda. Welcome, ladies.
Thank you.
So Amber, tell us a little bit about you and your high school students.
Sure. I have 5 children and I've graduated 3 through severance prep. And so I have 1 college graduate, 2 still in college, and I'm currently teaching a 10th grader and a 5th grader. So I still have some time to go, but have been through the standardized testing 3 times and am looking forward to going through it again soon with the 10th grader.
And Rhonda, welcome.
Well, thank you. Well, yes, I also have 5 children, and I have gotten through all 5 with Sonlight curriculum, loved it, and gone through the testing with 5 children and survived it, and even managed to work through the whole national merit thing, and we can talk about that later too, but it's doable. So,
Awesome.
yeah.
Well, thank you both for taking time to chat with me today. So let's start off by talking about why. Why do high school students need to take standardized tests? Do they need to take standardized tests? What do you think? Go ahead, Rhonda.
Well, it really depends. I know that we did a lot of researching and talking with our kids, and kind of noticing their natural propensities and interests and things like that, helping them focus on what kind of school they might want to go. And I guess it's just our family. Like, it's not, are you going to college? We pretty much are, you're going to college. What would you like to do there? Is more our question, but that's not every family. That's just us. And we, the testing, I think, is important for just depending on the college that you're going to. You can look up what they're looking for, and that's really what we did. We just looked at the college, read their information, and figured out the kinds of things that they wanted to see, and SAT or ACT scores was part of that. So definitely, then we got on the schedule, and we can talk more about that later. But yeah.
Yeah, I agree with Rhonda. I think at this point in what's happening with education and all of that, it seems to me that taking an SAT or an ACT is the standard thing to do. It's what most colleges want, and it's not excessively expensive, and there's a day to go. It's set up for you. It's not incredibly difficult to make that happen. We'll talk about this later too. I think some schools do not require the SAT. And this fall, that's changing because of COVID. There are many colleges that are opting out of that for this coming year. And we don't know what's going to happen in the future. But for now, for what we know right now, it has been something that's important if you are college bound. It's a good skill to have to learn to take these tests and to have them. I think especially as a homeschooler,
Yes.
It's one way that you can show, yes, we are where the peers are with these tests. And most homeschoolers tend to do quite well on standardized testing. And I think it's one way to show. It's easy for a homeschooler to throw a transcript together and say, oh yeah, my kids got all A's and B's. But when you have a standardized test score that confirms that same thing, that's very helpful.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's a very good point. It's a neutral evaluation. In other words, it steps back from the whole transcript production and all of that. So very good. I think another thing that's worth mentioning is that many states homeschool regulations require that high school students standardize test. And so even if your student is not going to college, perhaps college is not the choice post high school, and that's also another legitimate choice for a lot of families. You may still be living in a state that requires some sort of standardized testing for your high school students. So even if college isn't in the picture, that may not eliminate the whole standardized test thing for you. And we're going to mention something here, and we'll probably repeat it throughout based on what Amber was saying. We don't know what's going to happen with standardized testing. There are a lot of, excuse me, testing centers that have closed at the last minute. They had kids all registered to take the exams, and then because of local regulations having to do with the pandemic, they had to close. And so one of the things that you will notice if you check the College Board website, which is for the SAT exam, or the ACT website, they will tell you to check your email regularly. If you have registered for a standardized test, you want to make sure that you are daily checking to make sure you have a test to go take, or if perhaps they have modified how you're going to be able to take it. And so just something to keep in mind that we can't emphasize enough. You really, really need to check into that. We also were talking a little bit before we started about some schools that are talking about moving away from standardized tests altogether. I know I read an article that talked about some rather large Texas schools that are talking about stepping away from that, some in California. What are your thoughts on that?
Go ahead,
First,
Amber.
Rhonda.
Well, yes, they are. I don't know if just feeling like they can get maybe a more specific, broad picture of a child from a compilation of things that they have done that they can present, maybe more of a, not necessarily like a physical portfolio idea, but more of a portfolio picture of a person. So that would include maybe writing to a prompt for college entrance, essays, things like that. So they have a better idea of who the child is that they're thinking of letting in. I think certainly looking at transcripts would be another way they really get a good idea of who somebody is, because of maybe the classes that are listed, some are going to be standard, but they might see an emphasis of where the child has worked and taken a lot of more taken classes. Also looking at extracurricular activity, and maybe they're just feeling like we can get a better picture of the whole child instead of somebody who's just perhaps just focused on a test taking event, and they're good at that, but they're not necessarily as well-rounded. That could possibly happen with, if you're not a test taker. I know that there's some kids I have, well, actually my youngest, and then I have a dear friend who, even with, this is when the SAT was required for her child is very bright, is a great job, but not necessarily the greatest test taker. And so for her, what really worked well was to go get some instruction. She got dual credit and did some time at the junior college, did great, and then got scholarships and things like that into school, and kind of avoided that whole SAT, ACT trap in a way. So, I mean, maybe that's what schools are seeing.
Yeah, I was going to say dual enrolling has become so popular that I think that's also an opportunity to show my child is capable of college level work. Here's proof. And so that's helpful. I think too, depending on the size of the school, you might find some schools that are going to lean toward interviewing students, even having a conversation with students. And I think homeschoolers are particularly well adapted to that sort of thing. Most can tend to be well-spoken, especially those who really desire to go to the college level, tend to be articulate, able to be comfortable with older people and younger people. So they would tend to often do a better job. Again, I don't want to stereotype all homeschoolers
Right.
in that category, but that is traditionally a strength for us. So I think that that's really good too.
Mhm.
Yeah, good points. Well, let's dive in and talk about some specific standardized tests. Now, we're not obviously going to touch everyone that's available out there. There are many, but we thought we would touch on the most well-known 3 or 4. And we'd kind of like to break it down maybe and talk about it based on the year of high school. So starting in the freshman year, are there really any standardized tests that kids need to worry about taking that freshman year?
Personally, I do not think so.
Yeah.
I think that that freshman year, if you're doing that, I don't know. I think it's just a pressure that's unnecessary. That's my opinion. If you
Sure.
want to take a standardized test, I would suggest doing the normal standardized test, a CAT test or an Iowa test or some kind of just that normal standardized test that perhaps you've been doing all along. That's what I would recommend.
Good point. I agree with you. So then let's plow right ahead to the sophomore year. Got a couple 3 exams that typically are taken in the sophomore year. One that has to be taken in the sophomore year. So let's talk about those.
Mhm. Well, the PSAT 10 obviously would be for the sophomore year, and really that is basically, it's going to cover the same content that the test that they do for the junior year, that includes the national merit, but it offers a flexibility if you're getting it there. And that seems like a good practice sort of situation where you're just the nerves or whatever. That I feel like that's a great time to have that opportunity to, let's work out some of the nerves. It's not as scary as you think, and like, oh, and here's the timing of it, and just things like that that are more about not so much are they capable of the knowledge, or of showing those of that thinking that's on the test, but more just the actual skill of taking a standardized test would be very useful.
Yes.
And let me jump in there too, because you might have a mom who's panicking that she missed the PSAT 10 or something. You do not have to take the PSAT 10.
True.
Okay, so I'm in Virginia. I've homeschooled in 4 different states now, and not any of them have required the PSAT 10, but I always give my kids a standardized test in 10th grade. So I don't think I've had one of my kids do a PSAT 10. But obviously it's available and it's a great practice, like Rhonda's saying, but I just wanted to make sure that someone didn't think, oh no, if I miss the PSAT 10, I'm missing something. Because the truth is, you are allowed to take the SAT without taking any PSATs, if that's what you prefer, if that's what you want. Anyway, I just thought I would jump in on that about the PSAT 10.
Good clarification. Thank you.
Yes.
So when do students usually take the PSAT 10? What time of year?
I believe Rhonda's going to look it up on her magic.
I'm going to look it up.
Her cheat sheet. But
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure the PSAT 10 is in the fall.
Yeah, they are in the fall.
Yeah.
Yeah, October.
October.
Yeah. So you need to be signed up for those by, is it the beginning of September or sooner?
I think beginning of September is fine. Yeah.
Yeah. And keep in mind that all of this information is online.
Absolutely.
So if you're not furiously scribbling down notes, or if you miss something that we share, that information is not gone forever. So
no.
And actually, you can check. A lot of your local school districts will offer the PSAT 10.
Yes.
And so if you know what your local public school district is, you can look on their website. They often will have their testing dates listed for you, and also tell you when you need to sign up to take that, when you need to let them know that you want to be included.
Right.
Yeah, good
And
reminder.
private schools too.
Private schools too, absolutely.
Private schools too. I did that. I know I did that for a couple of my kids at the local private school, and one of them I did the public.
Yes, same for me.
So
Yeah.
what other exams are available during the sophomore year?
I didn't look, I didn't see anything in particular. Were you thinking of something?
Well, I
I
think
mean,
there are some, you could take AP exams. in
Oh, I see.
sophomore
Okay,
year.
those
Oh, your
kinds.
sophomore
Okay.
year, okay.
Yep. So AP exams, advanced placement, which are sponsored by the College Board.
Right.
Yes.
Those can be taken subject specific.
Yes.
And there are SAT subject tests that can also be taken in the summer of the sophomore year, I believe.
Yes.
I was going to say, I don't think I had any sophomores that were ready to take an AP exam.
Yeah.
That's just me.
Yep. No, I didn't either, but for those kids who are just phenomenal test takers, and some kids
Absolutely.
are,
Yes, absolutely.
that's an option in the sophomore year. So the junior year, this is the year. So let's talk about, let's start off with the ACT and the SAT. So first of all, maybe we should talk just a little bit about the difference between the two. Does anybody have a good handle on why would I take this one and not this one?
I
If you
think
don't do well on the SAT, take the ACT.
take the ACT.
No, just kidding.
Exactly.
That's the best advice. I'm just kidding.
But that's true, Amber,
Yeah.
because really what they should do, if you're having your child, of course they should be doing some practice tests and just see, like, you might see like one fits them better, or they just feel more comfortable with one because they approach it differently. And then I would say the huge difference is that the ACT has the science portion, and it's not that it's testing like science knowledge. It's really testing more like critical thinking, being able to look at data and come to conclusions, and more things like that is what it's really looking at. So that's really different. But I think, and schools don't seem to, like, I know I've read like, oh no, it needs to be the SAT because the high level, the MITs of this, nation, that's what they like. And it's really not true. That's kind of a myth. It's either or, ACT, SAT. And also, I think it's just that SAT is better known because it came out about like in like 1926 or something like that. Sort of, that's probably the date. I mean, I think ACT didn't come about till like 1956. So one just has been around longer.
I know a lot of friends whose children tend to be very good at math and not as strong in the verbal areas prefer the ACT.
There you go.
That's one, but I cannot speak to that from my own personal experience because we've done SAT. But Judy, let me jump in here just really quickly because the PSAT and the PSAT 10 are different tests.
Right.
Yes.
The PSAT 10 geared to 10th grade, but then the PSAT is to be taken the fall semester of your junior year.
Yes.
But you can only take it in the fall. And Rhonda can give us more information about this too. But in order to be considered for national merit scholarships, you have to take the PSAT your junior year in the fall.
Right.
And then there are other things that matter, but to even get into the pool of consideration, you have to have that PSAT in your junior year. Right. You can also take the SAT in your junior year. You can just forget about the PSAT. But if you don't take the PSAT, you cannot be put into running for the National Merit Scholarship.
Right.
So that's just an important thing maybe to clarify right now.
It is important. What you would want to know is that the PSAT, you might, when Amber is saying like, oh, okay, so to be considered for National Merit Scholar and take the PSAT as a junior, yes. And then you might be thinking in your mind right now, moms, I know who you are. You're probably thinking, okay, what number do we have to get? Guess what?
Don't know.
Work like that. It works like your child has to hit like the percentile, but it'll depend on what the pool of children are that take it that year.
Yes.
So it's competitive, I guess.
And it's the pool of your state. It's
Exactly.
state by state. So it's dependent on
Right.
where they hit the percentile that year for that particular state.
Right.
Yeah.
So to say all that, so if you thought that your child had some sort of national merit availability, like you thought that was an option, then I would definitely say, do the practice PSAT and they can even do it as a freshman. And like, if that's who you think you're dealing with, for that
Yes.
child.
Yes.
But if it's not that child, then don't bother.
Okay. Yeah, it's okay not to.
Right.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I was looking up some statistics, and I
Mhm.
think out of the 1.6 million kids who take the PSAT, once it gets whittled all the way down, there are only about 7,600 that end up with the actual scholarship, full scholarship. That is, yeah. So it's yeah. You keep whittling it down. So that's not to discourage anyone. And Rhonda's had a National Merit Scholar. I have good friends that had 2 kids that were National Merit Scholars and got full rides to a school, tuition free. But yeah, I wouldn't put all the eggs in that basket.
That's right.
And I also wouldn't feel bad if you missed the PSAT fall
Right.
time. It's okay. It's okay.
Yep.
It's just one indicator, I think, is
Yes.
the important thing to remember. And like you say, Amber, like my child who was National Merit, so he got the money for that, the scholarship for that. And to be honest, it wasn't that much. And then, for all the stressors that you could probably put yourself through and your
Yes.
child through, I'm just kind of like, I just don't know that it's worth it. It was more maybe in some pools, depending upon how competitive is the school that they're going to, then it would make a difference whether your child's going to get a full ride. But if your child is wanting to go to MIT, where a good portion of those kids are probably National Merit, it doesn't, do you see what I'm saying? It would lessen the availability of full scholarships to that.
But let's be honest, even if my child didn't take the PSAT and they scored a perfect score or
Yes.
within 100 points of a perfect score on the SAT, they're going to get a scholarship somewhere. Some school will look at their SAT and say, oh, whoa, we'll offer you a scholarship. So just don't feel like, oh no, I failed my kid. I didn't sign her up for the PSAT in time. Yeah.
Right. No, that's true. That's true.
And a good reminder, you need to make sure that you sign your student up for those exams, for the SAT, the ACT. Around August, September is typically when that registration happens. And then you can take the ACT or SAT in the junior year. And some students, and you do have the option to retake those exams. Didn't like the score you got the first time, you can take it again. In the spring, you can take it again in your senior year. So you do have the option.
Judy, this is an important point too, that if you retake it, most schools take your top score per section. So if you take it the first time and score really well in the verbals, not so well in the math, you can take it again, just focus on the math, improve the math, and the school will take your best score from each part. So I think that's really nice.
Yes. And I think that points to the importance of communicating with the schools that your child is interested in. We actually had one school for one of my children that preferred the ACT score over the SAT score, just because of the type of school it was and their experience with their incoming freshmen. And so those are all very good conversations to have, whether you actually physically talk to them or on the phone or you read on their website. Get that information. Don't wait till the last minute for sure.
Right. I was going to say that too, that if you set yourself a reminder like mid-July and just say, okay, I have a reminder on my phone or in my calendar or whatever, to just get online and look to figure out, okay, when are all these dates, and to take some of the pressure off yourself so you don't feel like you're scrambling at the last minute.
Yep, for sure. And again, junior year, those AP exams are certainly legitimate. There are CLEP exams that can be taken in your junior year. So
Sure.
lots of standardized testing possibilities in the junior year. So let's move on to the senior year. Any exams left to take in the senior year?
If you have already taken your SAT, you do not have to take a standardized test your senior
Right.
year.
That's right.
But let me say this, I have both, my oldest two children both took the PSAT and the SAT. But my first daughter is the only one who took the SAT her junior year. My second daughter took the SAT the fall semester of her senior year. And my son actually took his SAT, I think, also in fall of his senior year. Did I say senior? That's what I meant to say.
You did.
So I had two that ended up taking their SAT their senior year. So again, it's not the end of the world, depending on when you have to have applications in and all of that. Typically, the fall semester of senior year is still in time for some applications. And again, this is all dependent on the kind of school you want in. If you're going to MIT, you've got to do things a little differently. If you're going into a military academy, if that's your goal, your trajectory, you have a whole lot of other things you need to consider from seventh grade on. So that's just part of that whole planning. Again, you kind of knowing the trajectory.
Yes, and we'll stop and give a little pitch here for Sonlight's college and career planning product, because especially if this is the first time you've taken a student through high school and you are getting ready to step into that freshman year and you think, I'm going to forget, I'm going to miss, I'm not going to hit deadlines, I'm going to miss paperwork. Sonlight's college and career planning product is an excellent tool for helping you make sure you don't miss those things and for giving you confidence in being able to make sure that you check all the boxes and get all the things done. So very definitely look for that on our website, because
I would love to give a Sonlight plug too for the few AP courses that we have that actually do a really good job preparing your student for an AP exam. And so we've done the British Lit AP course. My kids haven't taken that AP exam, but I bet maybe some of Rhonda's have. But we have done the general psych, and that was amazing. And it's all laid out so that you can take the AP. Now here's a mistake I made. I didn't know that you had to sign up for AP exams so early. So we missed signing up to take the AP, or maybe I'm just trying to remember my thought process. Oh, I know what it was. I did know we had to sign up early, but I didn't know if my son was actually going to make it through and really finish the course by the April deadline for when to take it. And it's a kind of expensive. So instead of signing him up for the AP, we did the CLEP. And so we were able to sign up for CLEP, and he CLEP'd general psych. I mean, that course through Sonlight is so thorough. It's amazing. So that's another plug, that even if you don't take the AP course, you could CLEP easily through taking the AP courses through this Sonlight.
And one caveat, Sonlight's AP prep courses are not official AP classes from the standpoint that they are not in any way connected with the College Board. However, all of us here have had high school students who have taken those AP prep courses through Sonlight. I had a student who did the psychology and CLEP'd out of psych as well. And so those are valuable courses to help a student towards their post-high school planning.
Let me just add, this is a little bit of a segue, but yes, I absolutely agree. I've had students go and take the AAP, and you do want to know from your college what number they'll accept for credit, if that's what you're trying to do. And typically maybe it's a 3 or a 4 that your child would score on the AP, and then CLEPing 2. And then sometimes colleges don't want to lose out on lunch. Like, don't think, well, I'm going to save money and I'm just going to, have my child just like CLEP and AP the world away. but because sometimes they won't accept all those hours because they want to make money themselves. So there's that. The other thing I would say, and this is the part that's a little off topic, but I will say that I just from having 5 kids who have, well, 4 of the 5 are graduated from college now, and I've got a senior in college. I will say that I think it's important not to have your child take AP or CLEP out of classes that they're going to major in. Because when, for instance, if your child is going to be an engineer, you really want them taking the chemistry track, that how that college is going to teach them, that's what you want. And I almost feel like you're kind of at a disadvantage. So I would do AP, maybe AP credit and CLEP credit. This is just my opinion. You girls might have a different opinion, in things that are not your major. So like
I agree.
Yeah, it makes sense for psychology if that's not what you're doing.
Right.
I think if you can CLEP some gen eds, that's your
Yes.
general education. Sorry, I don't know. I don't want to just throw out terms necessarily, but yeah, if you can CLEP some of those, I agree with you, Rhonda. That's a very good one.
Well, and too, just that first year of college can be challenging. And to have your child, even though they could, or they're really smart, to have them go in all at, let's say, sophomore and junior level classes, maybe part of what college is figuring out how, homeschoolers, we typically, our kids know how to manage their time, but still, it's a whole nother thing on the college campus and things like that. So I don't know that they kind of need some of those, like, yeah, this class is manageable, this class is fine, and just be a normal kid,
And I think that's kind of the way we looked at it, was CLEP or AP exams were to help remove classes or get classes out of the way, so they had more time, more space to focus on their major.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
Good.
And to your point too, Rhonda, there's more about college than just being smart, right?
Yes.
So our children might go in, maybe your kid's the smartest one in the room, but I'm going to bet that they still have a lot of maturing to do. So there is that maturing process too, that needs to happen. And to that point also, Rhonda, I don't know how you feel about this, but I hesitate to have my kids take and I get that money is such an issue for so many people, but I think sometimes we push college courses on our high schoolers and don't let them have high school. That we aren't getting through some of the stuff that really kids should have in high school to really prepare them. It's all kind of like, how fast can I get through this? Or how little can I pay? Which I understand that that's hard, but I don't know. I just feel like there could be a better balance, maybe.
I absolutely agree with you. That's an important piece. Sure, you could have a whole lot of dual credit, but if your child has been fed and bred on the depth and breadth of Sonlight books, and you've talked with them about it, and they've grown and matured, that is beyond valuable. And they're just going to be a better, well-rounded, ready.
Yes.
Like those are the things. I'm, as you can tell, pretty passionate about that. Like, I believe it with all my heart.
And they only get to do high school once. So give them that high school experience and let them do it. So we got to move along here because we're running short on time. But let's talk finally. How do you get ready for standardized tests? Do you cram the night before, or do you hope that all of your homeschooling has been so phenomenal that they don't need to study at all? How do you get your kids ready for those?
I know what I did. What did you do?
No, you go ahead, Rhonda. You say first.
Okay.
That's good.
I'm going to say that when I was getting ready for this little chat, I got on the college board, and they had this handy dandy little section that is called, which y'all should look it up. It's Teacher Implementation Guide. And it's a 78-page document. Don't be scared. It'll be great. But it is super, super helpful because it breaks down what is specifically in a test. And it also breaks down the sorts of things that you should be doing every day in their high school curriculum to be ready to take the test. So it's not teaching to the test, it's educating your child so that it's really reflective when they take that test. It's reflective of all the good hard work of critical thinking that you've done. So with that, I was reading through that and I was thinking this was me. Oh yeah, did that in Sonlight. Oh yeah, did that in Sonlight. It's just like check off, because again, it's that holistic approach of Sonlight that builds that critical thinking. And I will also say this, that if you think that you're just gonna like give your child, like they're in high school, they can do this on their own, blah, blah, blah. There's a certain amount of that. But part of that maturity, part of that growing, that critical thinking, they still need to be talking to you. There's rhetoric, there's things that need to be happening. So that's what I'm saying. To prepare, you still need to be in there talking to your child. They need to be doing that higher level critical thinking with you. And it's supported by Sonlight. And so doing that. And then at some point, then I usually just had my kids, probably about 6 months before something. I just got one of those, I don't even know if they still have them, the big old thick.
They do.
Okay, books.
Yes.
And I would just have them do not a whole, like not all the language or all the math. I would just have them do one section of a test per day. And they would just continue through like that. And then maybe they'd take a whole one so they could get used to the timing of the test. Because it is timed. And for some kids, that's hard.
Yes.
And so to get up to speed. So that's kind of how I had them prepare. It wasn't definitely not a cram the night before. So strong curriculum and little bits.
Show and tell that document you mentioned.
Okay, this is it. Okay, I will care. It's awesome. It really is. Is that good?
Yeah.
Perfect. Teacher implementation guide from the College Board. Thank you for that. Okay, Amber, real quick, what did you do?
Yeah. Well, I wanted to say that there's some fabulous resources. For instance, if your child takes the PSAT, Khan Academy, you can upload your PSAT results to Khan Academy, and they will design test questions for you to help work on your weaknesses. So that's a really, really cool tool. Another thing that I did, I signed up for SAT question of the day. So Kaplan testing has this, and I actually just signed up my 10th grader for this. So a question is coming every single day in our email, and you can read it and answer it. It tells you right away if it's correct. So we can do that just every day. A question that's the kind of question that you would see on the SAT, the kind of math, the kind of verbal. So that's one way that we have prepared. The other thing, I have two more thoughts. So one is the book that Rhonda's talking about. I wish for my second daughter that I had gotten it sooner. We got it, and I think if we had had it at least for 4 or 5 months, that would have been best. But not only in there are practice, it's more than the practice parts, it's strategies for how to take them. And I feel like that's really valuable because it gives you, especially for the reading comprehension. Yes, if you're doing Sonlight through high school, your children probably are strong readers and are good at comprehending, but there is still a skill to figuring out how to do this and what they're looking for. And there are tricks. And if you can learn the tricks, you can do even better. So I think that it's a valuable resource. And finally, I would say that my child who's done the best on her SATs as a junior was the one that was already in pre-calc her junior year. So I would say that, and that can't always happen with every student, but if you're on a track to get through, to be taking pre-calc your junior year, your child will do better on the PSAT or the SAT junior year for having pre-calc, which is one of the reasons I waited for my son to take SAT senior year, because he wasn't on that track doing advanced. He was taking pre-calc his senior year. And I just wanted him to have a more positive experience with the SAT. It really does make a difference.
Yes. It
to
really
have gotten
does.
through that
Yeah.
level of math.
Well, and one other thing I was going to say to your point, Amber, in the preparation of like if you're doing the math sections, let's say, if you're familiar enough with them where you've gotten the question of the day or you've done one section, I know that at least two of my kids that I've chatted with this about told me that they felt like they got to the point where they were like, oh, this is this kind of question. Like
Yes.
they understood the writers of the SAT
Yes.
and what kinds of questions they ask and how they ask it. And so in other words, they took out the scary and the tricky
Yes.
because they, in a way, trained themselves to think like the test writers.
They were
Excellent.
so familiar. They were so familiar with those
Exactly.
questions. Yeah.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
it was not a frightening thing. It was just like, let me go see how well I can kick this thing.
That's another point too, that some of these websites have full tests that you can practice online.
Sure.
So also with the written one, but I think it's Kaplan, you can go on their website, you can take a full-blown SAT as a practice and then see what you miss. And so there's lots and lots of resources
Yeah.
that you don't necessarily have to pay for an SAT prep class, I guess is what I'm saying.
Oh,
If that's in the back of your mind, that wouldn't be an absolute necessity.
Excellent.
I don't think it is. Yeah.
Well, thank you, ladies. There's a lot that we've covered here, a lot of details, a lot of information. And it takes time to sort through all that. So certainly this workshop and the rest of our high school workshops will be available for replay. So if you want to go back after you've had a chance to process some of this and maybe walk through it again, that document that Rhonda shared from the College Board, all the details you need to know, that's an excellent, excellent resource for getting that information. And just the opportunity to step into our Sonlight Connections Facebook group or, some of the other Facebook groups that are out there or chat groups that are out there about Sonlight. Talk with other homeschool moms who have walked down this path ahead of you. So ladies, I thank you so much for just your wealth of information on standardized testing. And I appreciate your time and I look forward to seeing you guys again. Thanks.
All right. Thank you.